All right, good afternoon. This is Kevin McGonigal. I'm with DDS Match, and I am back today with my brother and partner, Joe McGonigal. Joe, how's it going?
Good to be here. Good to be here.
Today, we wanted to talk about that phenomenon that happens very often when we're at a trade show or a table, a study club, the table flyby, or just confusion about what it is that we do. DDS Match. Sometimes I hear people think we're a dating service. We're not too far off from that. Um, but I think when we tell doctors, we're a dental transition advisory firm, I would say the two most common responses we get are, I'm not ready to retire, or I'm not ready to sell. And wanted to throw that out to you today and see how you typically like to respond to that question.
Yeah, it's we've talked about this a lot, between you and I and Bill. It is an interesting phenomenon because it's kind of a quick, what do? They find out, and it's almost like stepping back. Whoa, whoa, whoa! I'm not ready for this. So it's kind of a it's a pretty visceral reaction sometimes to the table. And so I've often thought, why is that the reaction? Because frankly, I guess what compounds it is that a number of the dentists that do it, seem to be at the age at which
Yeah.
they should be talking to a transition advisor, 60, 65, 70 sometimes. So it is a fascinating thing. So for me, I think there's probably two reasons why people step back, pretty quickly from that conversation. I think one is the practice owner who maybe financially or economically just isn't ready to sell their practice, right? So either they need to keep working financially, their advisor has said, listen, you have to work another year or 2 years making current income, and then the sale of the practice would fully fund your retirement or give you the freedom to step back from earning consistent income. So that's pretty binary, right? If you can't financially do it, okay, that would be a reason you're not ready to sell.
Sure.
The second doctor, I think, is so different, Kev. And I think it's, you spend 25, 30, 35 years, owning a dental practice in a community where you are well known, well respected. And, maybe you don't have a ton of other hobbies. Maybe you're not an avid golfer, or, you don't go sailing, or, whatever it is that fishing, or whatever the hobby is. And so I think, frankly, for a lot of dentists, their identity is this.
Mm.
It is this practice, it is this team, it is this relationship with these patients. And so they don't have to work. And a lot of these doctors, you'll see, they're down to 3.5 days a week, maybe three. And this really is, I think the reason there is fear, just fear of, I don't know what it's going to be like on the other side of this practice I've built and this my day to day. And that's so different because it's not something you can touch or hold and say, no, 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 you have enough money. It says it right here. Like, your financial advisor is not going to help you over this hurdle. So that's probably different. So I think those are the two main drivers. I think, if we're agreeing that those are kind of why doctors step back from the table, I think the next question is, and I'll toss this one to you, is, what advice do you have for those doctors?
Yeah, the fear of the unknown, that one, I don't think that ever goes away, no matter what your profession or whatever you're doing. The fear of the unknown is always there. But in terms of advice, I think the number one thing that we talk about that I think of is to try to separate these two events. There is a transition plan, and then there is an actual transition or even a singular transaction or a sale event where people meet at a table, they sign some documents, and there's a new owner. But I think what we're talking about, or what's really important to understand here today, is the importance of giving yourself enough time to think about, build out, and ultimately execute a well-designed plan. It's really no different than what owners do every day in their practice with new patient exams, full set of x-rays, the perio charting, marking down everything that exists and everything that the patient might also be interested in. If someone comes in and says, they're interested in having a smile makeover, you don't just start drilling that day. There's a lot of work that goes into thinking about what is the ideal outcome. And for practice owners, that's thinking about the timing of their transition, the economics of it, what does an ideal buyer look like? And also, it gives us enough time to identify any issues that might keep you from achieving your ideal goals. Now we have time to work on the practice or to at least look at it the way that a buyer might. I think the key here again is to separate these two items. There is a transition plan, and then there is ultimately a transition or a transaction event. You know,
Yeah, and I think just to add on, I think great transactions are generally the outcome of a really well designed transition plan.
sure.
And there's no too early to start working on a transition plan, right? And so that doesn't mean just because you start working on a transition plan, that doesn't mean you're selling anything and it doesn't mean you're retiring. It just means that you're thinking about this asset you've built that has potentially very significant economic benefit to you as the owner, and thinking about how do I make sure that I optimize and maximize my potential since I've invested everything I have, time, energy, resources into building this.
Yep.
So because you call someone and say, hey, I want to work on a transition plan, if you call someone and they say, great, when do you want to list it? You might not be talking to the right person.
Mm.
And, I think part of why doctors say I'm not ready is we've had doctors call us and say, I'm 3 years out, but I called another broker and they said, call me when I'm ready to list it. That's not what we do, right? So what we do is we're big advocates of the plan because we know that the transactional outcome of a great plan is going to look very different for our clients.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly much more enjoy those phone calls as opposed to the ones that it seems we get more often than not, which is I've started winding things down over the past few years. We used to collect X, now we're down to Y, how do we move forward? And those are tough conversations sometimes, where there may have been something that we could work with and build a plan for. Had you called a couple of years ago, now whatever it is, it is. It's tough to speed up, if you will, at that point.
Yep. Yeah, no, for sure. And it's funny that when we get that call from that doctor, I used to be $1 million, now I'm 700. That client always wants to say, but you guys can sell the old $1 million practice, right? Like there's all this potential. Someone just has to get it back going, add the fourth day back in. And the answer is we can't. We can use potential to help us market the opportunity, but no one's paying for that. But to your point, Kev, we could have probably planned for this a little differently.
All right, let's finish this up. Let's give everyone maybe a couple of ideas of how they can start. What are some action items here?
Yeah, I think one thing is just mentally in your head, be okay and get comfortable with a transaction and planning being two different things. I think once you tell yourself, oh, I'm not selling something, this doesn't mean I'm retiring. If I call Kevin or I call Joe, this practice isn't going to be on the market next week and I'm going to have showings. Just be okay with, oh, I think the first step is get comfortable with this notion that, oh yeah, probably I'm 58 years old. I probably should have a transition plan. At best case scenario, so I can do this how I want to do it. Worst case scenario, if something were to happen to me, at least there's something in motion. I have some relationships in place with somebody. I think the second thing is you probably start to build out your team, in that 5 to 10 year window. So, selfishly, we think we're on that team or hope to be on that team to kind of help you understand what's happening in the current market. What are valuations looking like? What do buyer pools look like? How are these deals coming together, especially if you have a larger practice and you're thinking about strategic buyer or DSO, that's, could be any range of opportunities out there. But you need a great CPA who's going to be able to help, with the tax planning. And you should have your financial advisor in the mix to say, hey, economically, here's where the actual transaction could happen for you. That should be 2 years out. That should be 4 years out. And then we're talking about what if we change the value of the practice and all of those things. But as you can see, this is just like back to your example of a new smile or a full mouth reconstruction. A lot of general dentists in that scenario will call in the oral surgeon or the periodontist or whatever. And a team of people come together to serve this patient.
Sure.
That's kind of what I think about, in this stage is you're starting to put people in your team that you're going to trust to kind of shepherd you through the process.
All right, sounds good. Well, you heard it here. If you're ready to start talking about your transition plan, we're always available, happy to help. You can reach out to Joe or myself, or really anybody on the DDS Match team, and we'll be happy to help. So thanks, and we'll see you next time.
Take care.